Hello, everybody. Welcome, welcome. We're so glad you're here. Woo, I have Amani Hansen. You know Amani. Every single month we're together, and Amani shares some more incredible things with us as far as how to paint and how to create. And a lot of you need to see last month, if you didn't. She talked about how to use different types of ways of embedding like shells or anything that you would want through different types of mediums like crackle paste, modeling paste. So all of that is in last month's video. So check it out. It was amazing. I had fun with my leadership team. We all created, woohoo! It was amazing. And we took shells from here, Southern California, and embedded them. And man, they just turned out so well. Or different shells or rocks from anywhere. And I did a painting that's in my living room. Yes, I did, with the same type of technique, and I love it. And so does my family. So God is good. Amani, welcome.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Yeah, so if this is your first time joining us in the Create Forum, we love to explore either art, music, dance, or writing. We're talking about art today with Amani, and we're talking about something that I have absolutely loved called a resin pour. And I was with Amani in her studio, and I was able to create this on a piece of wood. And this is cool. So this is like the ocean. And again, this is like the layering of different types of ways of what you can do of moving. You will talk about moving the resin and moving the different colors within that resin and seeing it move. And then you can use this as a cutting area or putting cheese on there. Isn't that beautiful? So that's just, and she sells this too online. So Amani, if they want to know more about what you do with the resin pours to actually purchase something from you, where would they find that?
My website is amanihansen.com. So really easy. Or on my Instagram is amanihansen.art. And you can see the process, a lot of the stuff that I do. And then there's a link there too on how to purchase.
Yeah. So she's amazing. But Amani, first of all, how did you fall in love with resin pours? Because I was so intrigued. So I saw her resin pours because she would do some of them also at Bethel Art on Stage. So I would be seeing these because it's such a glossy, strong, like pour that it just creates so much depth that you couldn't get without that. With just plain acrylic, you can't get that. And so it creates a totally different feel, almost three-dimensional feel. And I'm going, I want to learn how to do this. So Amani taught me, and Aisha's going to be teaching you. But when did you first fall in love with it? What's the story behind it?
Well, a few years ago, it was actually right before COVID, coincidentally. I think I was looking up just regular acrylic pouring, and I tried that out, and I wasn't too much of a fan. But somehow in that process, I found resin, and I was so inspired. I was like, I really want to try this. And I was a little intimidated because there's some tools I wasn't used to using, like a blowtorch and stuff, but and the initial expense can be high, but I just felt so drawn to it. I'm like, I really think there's something here for me that I want to pursue. So I did, and I was immediately hooked. I just was like, it really was what got me out of bed every morning for a while, was just like the excitement. I was working in my garage, so I'd like run out there to see how it cured overnight and to see what it was looking like and to figure out if I had mastered the technique. It can take months to really get the effects that you want to actually like look the way you want them. So
Yes.
It was kind of this roller coaster of emotions of the learning curve, and like going from like feeling comfortable with my art as an acrylic artist to being like in a whole new zone of back to the beginning. And I'm like, I do not like this feeling.
It's so true. It's like, I think that's part of when you try something new like this, because resin pours are unique, and she'll be talking about that. But as you do that, there's a way of seeing how the paint moves and seeing how the torch moves and seeing how the resin responds. All of that. It's like you're not, it's not one dimensional. Like, okay, when you paint, it's you and the brush, you and the paint, and the different kinds of maybe glazes you can get. But when you do resin, whoa, it's a whole other playing field. And so you had to you had to become a novice.
Yeah, I had to become comfortable with not knowing. And like you said, there's a lot of factors, like the humidity can affect how and the temperature of your room and the way that you hold your tools. All these different things play a part in how your piece is going to turn out, how much dust is in the air. So it was like, this whole another level. But it fits so perfectly in what God was doing in my heart. Actually, I think that's why I was so drawn to it, because I had this picture that he gave me just for my own life of like laying back in the waves where, in Hawaii in the summertime, there's like very little waves. And so I just pictured like laying back and him just very gently bringing me to shore, just floating in. So he was talking to me about this process of rest. I had just moved to the Redding area. I wanted to be involved in the creative arts at Bethel, and I didn't know how to get involved in that because I didn't know anybody. And there were several other areas in my life where I felt like I've got to make it happen. I have to do it, like it was about like striving to get where I wanted to go. And so that's why it was so significant that he said that to me about like living from a place of rest and just like laying back. This is also like just before COVID, which, became a really interesting season for people of letting go and having to, go from performance and, a lot of activity into like this quiet place. And so I thought that was really significant too. But in resin, you're doing layers. So you put on one layer of resin, it cures, you put on another, and you keep building. Some of my paintings, I have like 6 layers of resin. And so this painting that I did this painting to symbolize what God was talking to me about, that I named Rest. And it had a layer that correlated to every part of my journey. So it was really interesting. It went from kind of surface level, like down, like really into the depths of my heart, of like where God really needed me to just come to peace and rest in him. It was like we were living in a place that didn't feel safe. There was like a shooting at the house next door, a big shootout, and we were woken up during the night, like somebody banging on our door that needed protection, like these different things. That my husband worked away from home, so I did not feel at peace or at rest. I was like, So that was one layer, and then another layer was like finding my place and just like being at peace with God leading me into connection. So it just kept going deeper for me in my heart, and it was just so cool. That's always the way God works with me, is as I'm painting, he's revealing to me what he's talking about, and I feel it often correlates to what's happening like either in the church community or the world at large. So that was like such an obvious thing for me. I was like, oh my gosh, wow, I just found it so cool that he would like use my art for me in that way, to speak in such a tangible way to me.
Yeah, and to it's like the art was actually a part of what he was saying to you. It became a part of your journey. And then when you look at that piece of art, all those memories will come back, and where he led you and what's happening. I think that's the beauty of art that's in process, is like art not only can be something of beauty that we bring, but it can tell our story. Kind of like what the shells, and how that was my journey of, I mean, I would always pick up shells at the beach. I mean, it's just part of what I love. And so having that embedded is a way of God embedding and the sand too. We were embedding the sand in. And I love that scripture that talks about how precious are his thoughts of us. They're greater than the sands on the seashore. And when you have a painting that displays that, like it actually becomes a part of your journey. So you guys excited? I bet. There was a question that I can kind of answer too. It's like, how is resin different than acrylic? Well, you use acrylic in the resin pour. So resin is more of the medium that you use to get a more three-dimensional effect. So they're not one or the other. They're actually together weaving in. And why don't you share a little bit more about that?
Yeah, resin is a two-part system that starts as a liquid and then it cures into a very hard plastic. So it's been used like to coat boats or for countertops or garage floors. That kind of thing is kind of more, I think, where it started. And in the last few years, it's become an art form. So when I started, I guess, close to 3 years ago, just under, there weren't people, like there weren't YouTube tutorials on it yet. There was just a kind of small handful. Australia, it's been used as an art form for a bit longer. So I found a lot of several Australian artists that I kind of would follow and try to see what they were doing to learn. And then only like just 2 or 3 major ones in the US from what I could find on Instagram and stuff. And so in the last few years, it's just blown up. There's lots of people trying it now.
Yeah, and it's really become it's just a beautiful way of and we're going to be sharing with some videos, but it's a beautiful way of I mean, I had no control, we put 2 or 3 layers, but I had no control over how the white would move with the torch. You just had to kind of angle it, which we'll talk about in a second. But the beauty of that is you're not really in control. Ha, ha, ha. And it's kind of like the Holy Spirit. We're not really in control. We have to let go. So there's so much, I would say, parallel with our own love of wanting everything to be perfect, and then letting go and letting God come in. That just is such a beautiful thing. It's gorgeous. Tell me a little bit, because this is something that people need to understand, is how have you allowed the Holy Spirit, you kind of alluded to that, the Holy Spirit come in to the process as you create in glazing with resin? How does that work?
For me, it kind of depends on what the painting is that I'm working on. But it's really, like you said, this process of letting go of control. And, I was working on this 3 foot by 4 foot resin painting. It was my largest painting with resin, and for good friends of mine. And of course, I wanted it to be perfect. Mm-hmm. And so I'm doing the layers, and then this one layer just spilled over where I did not want it to go. And I'm like, oh no, it's ruined. And I realized I had this really firm picture in my mind of what I wanted it to be like. And it wasn't going to be that way anymore. And so it was a really good chance for me to let go and be like, okay, it's not what I thought it was going to be, but how can I work with this and make it, the best that it can be? And it actually ended up being so beautiful. The way that wave spilled over, where I thought I didn't like it, actually ended up like being a really cool effect. So I think that's happened a lot. And I use my time interceding also. Like this painting behind me here is called Healing Waters, and it's got the crackle paste on the bottom and then the layers of waves. And when I was painting it, I was listening to the Alabaster Heart song on repeat, just like I probably listened to it 100 times. And I was just like interceding for healing in my heart and people's hearts. And like the crackle on the bottom represented like the broken and dry places that I needed God to come into. And I was just, it was just layer after layer of like letting God wash over me and just believing that people that have one of these I made a series, have one of these healing water paintings are going to be experiencing that in their life of God's healing, just coming into those broken places and bringing refreshment and life. So
that's so cool. I love that. And again, like what somebody was asking too about the actual what you use. Do you use a canvas or do you use wood? What would you like recommend for small versus large resin pours?
Yeah, so I use a wood panel. I don't have a plain one, but you can see this is the back. It's got tape on it, but it's like called a cradled wood panel. You can use canvas, but you have to reinforce it, otherwise it sags. So especially on a large painting, that's just adds a whole nother challenge that I have walked through and wouldn't recommend. So when I started with 8x8 little ones, and then 10x10, and then 12x12, and I worked up because it is a expensive medium. It's just makes sense to start small and get comfortable with your technique. So yeah, it took me months before I built up to doing like my rest painting was a 30x40 painting. But it was months of doing small pieces before I attempted that.
What kind of wood do you use? What would you recommend them to get, like at Home Depot, whatever? Or do you get your own?
I buy mine from Blick, the cradled wood panels from Blick, the studio. I think it's the studio level. And they've been great. They're birch, like a smooth birch wood.
Yeah, for those of you that want to, you can go down home. If you don't have that money, you can go to Home Depot and you can buy something with birch, something that's heavier than plywood, and you can have fun. Experimenting is always the best way of doing this. So use what you have. Like this is just like, and this is just from Home Goods if you're in the US, but this is just like a rind, a tree. There's a tree, so not finished, nothing's on it, and we just did a resin pour over that. So you can get that too. So just try on some things and see. But again, any more questions, let us know, but I wanted you to share the one about the justice issue. Like share about why you did it and what you were trying to communicate through that, because this is so cool.
Yeah, so it was really neat. As soon as I started working with resin, I'm making like these tropical beautiful ocean scenes, and just thinking about how there's people in the world that don't have access to clean water. And so I thought resin would be a really cool medium to use to be able to do a piece to bring awareness to the need for clean water. So it was about a year actually of doing resin before I was ready, or maybe actually longer, before I was ready to actually create the piece. It was a 3-foot by 4-foot painting. And I'll show a time-lapse video of it in a minute, but It's a boy that's leaning over to drink dirty water. And so I used the crackle paste as the under layer, like, you know, showing like the dirty ground. And then I covered it with resin. So he's drinking out of like a dirty mud puddle. So it's a photographer's image that I recreated into a resin painting. So really cool. I ended up selling it just a few months ago, and to somebody that had been to Africa and really had a heart for it. And I was able to donate like a large portion of my proceeds to be able to go towards digging a well in Africa. So that was a dream come true for me. It's like a big part of my heart is to see my art not only bring awareness, but also bring resources to people that are in need and, you know, that are related to the justice issues that I highlight. So, yeah.
I love it. I think that part of guys, the beauty of a resin pour is it's got this luminosity, and you guys can Google it too. We're talking about, like, she's going to show you some instructional videos, but just like now that there are more out there, if you want to get started, there's stuff on how to use your torch, how to whatever she's talking about, and she'll give you a supply list in just a minute. But part of this is that it's going to lead to something. Like for Amani, it led to deep inner healing. It led to people getting touched at Bethel that saw it, but it also led to a social justice painting that was able to bless the very people that she wanted to, in the proceeds helping to go to actually drill a well, which is so cool, isn't it, Amani? It's like God has a purpose for us creating, and a purpose for why we're creating in a certain genre in a certain way. So it's so powerful, man.
Yeah, it's so neat because the whole process with the resin, actually, at first I felt like, oh, this is so frivolous, and it's just, you know, making pretty waves. Like, we don't need more pretty pictures in the world. We need, you know, like truth and justice.
Yes.
I didn't know that I felt so strongly about that until I felt so like just almost like put off by my own work. Like, yeah, sure, it's pretty, but like, what's the point? Where's the value in it? And God really showed me really over the last couple of years how much power there is in his beauty. And that is actually, like it says in Psalms, like David's like crying out, like, you're so beautiful, God. And then he says, I will take up my sword and I will fight for you. So it's actually like from that place of relishing the beauty of God, gazing on his face, that we actually like are called into purpose. And so for me, it was a really interesting process of like diving into the beauty of God and allowing God's presence to come through that, because we need beauty in our lives. It brings peace and joy and healing.
Yes.
And like darkness can't exist in the beauty realm. Yeah. So like if you can create a painting that's beautiful, that somebody's like becoming engaged in, then you're like creating a space for them to have an encounter with God, and for the things that are like darkness around them to be let go, because they don't have space for that in connection with beauty. So it was interesting just even sharing with you, realizing like, oh, first I had to get to that beauty place. Yeah. And then I was able to come into that place of like, okay, like kind of taking up a sword, like for justice.
Yeah.
The painting's called Thirsty.
Thirsty. So we're going to watch this right now, and you can kind of see her process and see what happens. So take it away, Amani.
Let me find it here.
to let it go. Shine a light through an open door. Loving like I will divide. Turn away 'cause I need you more. Feel the heartbeat in my mind. The way I'm feeling, I just can't deny. But I got to let it go. We found love in a holy place. We found love in a holy We found love in a holy
Woo! Come on, that was so amazing. Woo! We have some questions. Number one, is that was resin in the bottle that you were using, right?
Yeah.
Was that for the whole entire? Was that just for where the water was?
I just did the bottom half, so from his mouth down.
That's exactly right. So guys, what you were seeing is like one of us more of a flat kind of look. That was the top where the boy was. The bottom was the resin. And then Susan asked, you can make as many layers as you want, correct? Yeah. And again, it is the surface that you're using. So again, if you're just trying out on a small canvas, the hard canvases are good for this. And 8x8, you should be fine. But if you put in like 20 layers, the wood is what would help it to stay. And resin can't crack. It's like, it's luminous. It's like a liquid that then just dries. And it takes to cure. I mean, how long does it take? Like a couple days for it to actually dry?
Yeah, well, it takes, it's good to wait 12 hours between, or around there, between coats.
Yeah.
Sometimes I do, like, as long as it's like very, very, very tacky to the touch. So sometimes I need to shorten my time frame and I'll do it sooner. But yeah, you'd wait about 12 hours and then it actually cures over time for quite a while. So it'll be more prone to scratching for a few days, even weeks. And like, even though it'll feel really dry, like hard to the touch, it can take, I don't know the official number, but a couple weeks to be like fully, totally cured to the point where you don't have to worry about it getting scratched or whatever.
So the more layering you do, guys, the more longer it takes to dry because it's a layer upon a layer. So you just have to like, and then what she's talking about, you just like the problem, and I know that she knows it's a problem, is like you want to touch it. And then it creates that place where you could see where it was being touched. So when you touch it, you want to touch it in the back area or a place where it's not going to matter to see how dry it is. But I'm sure you have many tips on this, don't you?
I've made many mistakes, that's for sure.
Sometimes when you touch it, you have to go over it again with another layer so that it doesn't show.
Yeah.
It's smooth to the touch. Yes. These are the tricks of the trade. This is what she's talking about. But let's go into supplies. Like if they were going to get supplies needed, like where would they get that? And what would be the standard of what to start out? What do they need to get?
So of course you need resin. The brand that I've been using is called Total Boat. I buy the big ones. You don't need to buy a giant thing. So it's a 2-part system. So when you buy it, it comes as a set. So this is a 1-gallon set, and the brand is Total Boat. There's also other brands that, like Moz Epoxy is an awesome brand, and they really, like they do a lot of stuff with tutorials, and I've been using this one because it's, I feel more confident in the longevity of the product. But there's also a brand called Art Resin that lots of people like to start with. But if what you're wanting to achieve is the lacing look with the oceans, which is what, you know, a lot of people are drawn to, it's really specific to a good resin. So either Moz Epoxy, MAS, or Total Boat. And then you want to use a respirator because it is a fume, and the main thing is when you heat it up, it's releasing the fumes that you don't want to be breathing in. So you can buy it at Home Depot or Amazon. And then gloves, just, you know, regular like plastic gloves, and then a heat gun. Mine is very well used, but this brand Seek One is my favorite, and it's on Amazon. I like it because it has temperature setting and speed setting, and it comes with different nozzles. So this is the one I want. Different resin artists, they have different styles of doing it. So my waves have, I think, more of kind of a wild look to them. Other resin artists, you'll notice theirs are all like very, very even. That's because of your nozzle. That's kind of some more in-depth stuff that you can learn if you want to. And then a torch. So a creme brulee torch is a perfect way to start. I got a giant one because I do big pieces, so I just figured it's easier to use than having like a little torch. But I started with a little torch and it was great. And then popsicle sticks are really good. I thought I had one here. Yeah, I do. Just some fat popsicle sticks are great for stirring your resin. You want your container to have measurements on the side so you can figure out it's a equal parts, so 1-to-1. So you can even use a Dixie cup and you just make sure you've marked them equal, and then mix the 2 parts together. You'll see this process in the tutorial.
And again, you just throw away those cups, guys. So you don't want to get anything that costs money. Get the plastic cups. Don't do
like I just use clear plastic cups for a lot of my stuff. And my Total Boat sells the ones that have you'll see it in the demo, but has the measurements on it for your 1-to-1 ratio. So you can mix with that and then use just plastic cups for tinting your resin. So this has a little bit of, this is hard, but this has a little leftover resin in it that was clear, and I added paint to it, and no, it's just the extra that dried in my cup.
How much, again, like, Karen, Lori is asking how much resin do you normally use in a painting? It's going to vary on the size and how many layers that you do. So
yeah, let me grab my measuring cup. So here it is with the ounces. So this is a 12 by 16 painting. This is what I did. I'll show you in the demo. This is actually what I did last month, my craft.
yes, yeah,
shells.
yeah, come on.
And then I added the resin so you could see how glossy it is. So for this size, I did, it was 8 ounces and I had a little bit extra. So it took 8 ounces about for a 12 by 16. I do it very intuitively now. Like now I can just like look at my painting and I just fill it till I feel like I should stop. But at the beginning, I had it all calculated like ounce per ounce. I wanted to know exactly how much each size painting required and cost and all of that. So I don't do that anymore.
Yay, I'm so glad. Okay, so those are your basics, and then when you add the color, like in this painting, tell them what colors you used. And it was golden paint. It was a liquid kind, but share about that too.
Yeah, so liquid, the fluid golden paints are my favorite. Just makes it really easy for mixing your colors. In the demo, I used, well, I mixed up my own color. For this dark blue is a very custom color. So it's got anthracone blue, white, Van Dyke brown. So you can experiment just to make whatever blue, but phthalo blue is always my favorite. I just ran out. And teal is my other favorite, which I also ran out. So I was having to just experiment and see what would happen with this piece. So I used manganese blue and anthracone blue for this painting. And then the most key thing is for the white that you see that creates this lacing for the wave, that is not white paint, it's resin pigment. And so my bottle is so covered in gunk that I don't know that it'll help much, but it's a little bottle like this. Moz Epoxy has my new favorite. So it's called a resin pigment in white, and that's what you mix to create your cells. So they've formulated this specifically to get your very best lacing. So it's probably, you might be a lot more successful faster than I was, because now there's these great new products that make it easier. Then when I started, I actually was like mixing my own white pigments to get the effect that I wanted, but
Yeah,
that's the key.
yeah, and so she'll demonstrate putting the different drops in the epoxy resin, and then she'll stir it around, and then she'll pour it, and then she'll take the torch. So there's a whole method that she's going to be explaining, but those are the basic supplies that you need to get started. And then just watch some YouTubes too, besides what Amani's sharing with you, in case you want to know exactly how to do certain things, because the more that you can learn, right? I mean, Amani, when you were starting out, there wasn't as much just from Australia. So we want to get you prepared. And
Yeah.
then, so we're excited. Anything else before we get started on the video that you think would be helpful?
I think that should cover it. The video is just slightly sped up. My voice might sound a little bit different because it's at 8.5 minutes. So you can see the whole process. So I detail through the whole first layer, and then I let that layer cure, and then you'll see a time lapse of me doing the second layer. And so I think we'll have a little bit of time for Q&A after.
Yes, we will.
And then the other, so you put to, when you prep your spot, you want a heavy duty plastic on your table and some kind of thing to get it off so the resin can drip over the edge of your painting. So we eat a lot of yogurt in my house. So I use yogurt containers, and I just make, I use 3 or 4 to set a painting on. You can also use little plastic cups or whatever you find that will just get it up enough that the resin can pour over.
And quickly too, one person's asking, David is asking about too, you can use modeling paste before, you can use the crackle paste, just wait till it's all dry. Or you can even put little rocks in there, Rodney and Sonia used. You can do any of that kind of stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes I love to, on my bigger paintings, to go really in depth in the background. I don't know how much you'll be able to see, but on this one I used the salt and alcohol techniques underneath on my base layer.
Oh yeah, you can see it. Yeah.
And then that shows through.
Oh, so cool.
And just adds a whole nother layer of depth. So
oh yeah, Monty, that's amazing.
Yeah, that's a brand new piece. I still have to clean the back. So when the resin cures, you have these drips that hang over the edge. So one thing I don't talk about in the demo is that you prep the back of your wood panel by putting tape. You can just use a painter's tape to protect the back so that when the resin pours over, it cures, and then I'll heat this up with my heat gun to take it off. That's the kind of thing you can find on YouTube really easy, or on my Instagram page to see how you do that.
That's so cool. Yeah, you're not done, guys. There's more you have to do before it's completely done. Take off the tape and use the heat gun to get that stuff off. So yeah,
that's my least favorite part.
I totally
tend to procrastinate on that part. I like getting started and
oh yeah,
we're
all like that.
Yeah, but let me pull up the demo for you guys.
Okay, and then we'll have some Q&A, everybody. So at the end of this time we'll have Q&A.
Okay, so first step is to get your measuring container. This one has pre-marked spots showing 1-to-1 ratio. So for this small canvas, I'm just going to do 2-at-2. I have a 2-part resin system. So this is part A and part B. So I'm going to do equal parts of both. Fill it up to the 2 spot. So once you have both parts in your cup, you're going to get your mixing stick and you're going to mix it. At first it'll become foggy as the parts start to react. Just scraping the edges. So you mix it until it's clear. So once it looks like it's clear, I just hold up my popsicle stick, let it drip, make sure there's no murky spots. Make sure it looks crystal clear. Next step is dividing up your parts. So I've got some clear cups and a little one. So what I'm going to do is divide my clear resin into smaller batches that I can tint with paint. And then I'm leaving some in the cup. This is where it gets to the fun part. You get to mix in your paint. So these are actually all different colors than I normally use, but I've got a dark blue, brighter blue, and my white pigment, which is not paint, it's actually resin pigment. So my first batch, I'm going to do the darker blue. I just need a few drops. Mix it up. We'll put this one. Drop. I want it more transparent. So next I use yogurt containers because we eat a lot of yogurt. I'm just gonna put my painting up here. I've already painted the background. And I've used the crackled paste and shells on the bottom and painted it. So first step is to pour on your darkest color. And I'm gonna go ahead and smear it around. It's self-leveling, so I don't have to worry about getting it smooth. And then I have this very transparent blue. A little tricky since I'm going from transparent to opaque. And then what I do is I put a clear buffer here. And then since I have enough extra, I'm going to add clear in here to dilute it. And then I have my little batch of clear. I'm going to add white pigment to it. Mix it. And this you want to make sure you mix and check you don't want to see through it. And you don't want it to look streaky. That's how you know you have the right amount. I'm going to use the heat gun on the low setting. Now what's going to happen is the white is going to react with the other colors and start to form cells. I have a large torch. You can also use a creme brulee torch. Fire it up. And just run it over real quick. It helps activate the cells. And then up here, it pops the bubbles. And what I can also do, just for fun, is I can decide if I want like another wave out here. This is going to react differently out here because it doesn't have the clear buffer and because it's a different it's different paint mixture. That's it. So then this cures. It needs to be all the way firm before you do another layer. So it's best to just do another layer the following day. So next I'll mix up a new batch and I'll probably put my next wave somewhere along here, and that'll help blend this middle spot here. So here's a close-up after the cells have formed. It's created a beautiful lacing pattern that looks like a wave on the ocean shoreline. So now we're going to do layer 2 and just repeat the same process, mixing up the resin, tinting it with the colors that you want, putting the white pigment along the edge, creating your wave and blowing it out with the heat gun. And then I'll go over it with the torch to just activate the cells and let it form. And here it is, a double wave resin ocean painting.
Ooh. Wow, come on, you guys. Everybody, you need to buy this. You need to do this. But questions. Let me grab the questions for you guys. Great job. This is amazing. Jenna would like to know, is that just acrylic paint and that you're mixing? Talk about the white one from Moss so that she understands that.
Yeah, so for my blue, that's just acrylic paint. That's golden paint. I find that golden paints make the very best, have the best reaction with the resin. And then the white is the Moss pigment. So it's MAS white resin pigment that you get to mix to create the cells. I don't know where I just put it, but
yeah. Yeah, it's Moss. So just look at Moss and look at the white pigment, right? Is it called white pigment?
Yeah.
Okay. And then David asked, would it be okay to use a blow dryer instead of a heat gun?
It's not going to work as well because you need the heat. Like blow dryers don't have the same heat as a heat gun. So people have tried it. I don't know if it's been very successful because the heat gun has more power to blow it farther and has the heat.
You know, David, the creme brulee, that it's not that expensive. So getting a little like almost like at the looking like kitchen supplies, whatever on Amazon, the creme brulee, it should be $8-10 or something. So it's not that expensive.
Yeah, the heat gun like this one, but this is what you don't want to. Ideally, you use this instead of a hair dryer, and it's like $20 or $30 on Amazon, so it's not bad.
No, that's pretty good. Cindy would like to know, did you use resin over the shell area?
No.
No.
So I just left the beach exposed and then did the resin is just from the white line back.
And Cindy, we used the crackle paste to get the cracks in. That was all. So when you look at when you re-look at this video, you can see that that's already there in the sand. So that's already dry. And she put some paint in there before she started doing the resin, just so that you guys know. And then how is resin different from alcohol ink? Totally different. Why don't you explain that, Amani?
Yeah, so resin is like a 2-part system that actually turns into a hard plastic when it cures. So like this now like a hard plastic. So alcohol ink, also very different than paint, but alcohol ink would be more similar to paint than it would be to resin. I guess the only similarity is that you move them both with a heat gun. or a hair dryer. So alcohol ink, you can use a hair dryer because you don't want the high heat. Resin, you need the high heat of the heat gun in order to get it to move. That's what makes it flow.
Yeah, it's very different. The only way, guys, that I would describe it, it's like such an incredible, when I did it with Amani, it's such an incredible free thing because you are just playing with the wave. You are just playing with the torch gun, but you're figuring it out. So it is like it's like you become a novice again, but it creates these incredible things that you can do, not only in waves, but like over a face. You can create great depth there as well. So it's not just for waves, it can be for anything that you do. And it just creates a beautiful, what I would consider a professional looking piece. So it's just, and having it like, and somebody asked about, I think it was about the crackle paste underneath. And if you use the resin, it's cool to have a different effect. So on 1/2 or 1/3, there's no, because your eye is drawn to the wave, and that's where it should be, right? And so it creates more dimensional things. So you can have some parts of your piece be with resin and some not. So there's all different kinds of things you guys can do. But again, guys, if you enjoyed this at 10:30 on Create Academy, we're going to be asking Amani more questions. So she'll be on for the first 20 minutes of our talk with Susan. So join us then. If you are not yet in Create Academy, the team is going to put on a discount code for a monthly subscription for the first month, half off, called Focus 2022. So put that in there, go to theresadedmon.com, and you can register, subscribe to Create Academy and check it out for a month, see what you think, and enjoy it. But Amani, high five it. I was just with her in Reading. Now I'm back in SoCal, but I want you to pray for people. Like, this is a new adventure for so many people that are right here, right now, around the planet. And just pray for them for success, but also just for the joy in the journey.
Yeah, God, thank you for all of these amazing ways that you've given us to create with you. And I just pray that you would give all of these creatives new excitement to dive in and to learn with you and to let go of their comfort levels and to just find new ways to play with you and to express your beauty. I thank you that your beauty is infinite, and so is your creativity. So I just release that to every person watching, that they would just experience new levels of creativity and joy and freedom, and to just let go of control and perfectionism, and to be able to be childlike with you, to just remind themselves that we are children and we're your children, and you don't hold any judgment against us when we're not perfect. And so just release that to everyone here, to just experience your freedom and your love of creating with you. Amen.
Amen. It's so good, Amani. Woohoo. Okay, you guys. So go ahead and we're going to jump off. Have an incredible day. Share this with friends that you know would love, love, love to know more about this. Get those amazing products. And next month, we're going to have Susan in our focus group actually have people share about what they've created as well. So from the resin pour. So blessings upon you, Amani.
Thank you.
See you guys later. Bye, everybody.